Hey guys, so today we're going to be looking at the PlayStation 4. I recently picked this up a couple months ago, and I'm basically just going to go over the reasons why I would say this is a pretty good console to pick up today, especially with the prices coming down so fast, and with the new PlayStation coming out in a couple months, along with the current PS4 Pro being out, that sells at around $399. This is a bundle I picked up at Costco. So everything here was included in the bundle. This is the regular PS4 Slim. Picked it up for $250. It was bundled with this Uncharted 4 game. This normally retails for around $59, so $60 game. Very fantastic graphics. Also came with these two original PlayStation 4 DualShock remotes. I've only opened up one at this point. Now, the main reason I picked up this system, and I'm not really a gamer, keep that in mind while I talk about this, is because of the price. So for $250 with all this extra equipment, you really can't get a better deal than that, to be honest with you. In terms of games, I'm a little bit disappointed with the PlayStation 4 as compared to the Xbox. There are a lower amount of total car racing type video games. There's a good amount of RPG and shooter type games, which really aren't my thing. You can get a multi-platforms also. I do have Grand Theft Auto 5, fantastic game, but you could also play that on the old Xbox 360 if you're looking for a fantastic bargain at this. Seeing as how this is the most basic of the PS4 systems right now in terms of the memory, this is a 500 gig unit. Keep in mind, this game alone right here says 50 gigabytes minimum required. So what that means is at most you'll be able to load 10 or so of these types of games. So if you're into maintaining a large video game library on your system, make sure to at least get the 1 terabyte version, or else you'll constantly have to be taking it in and putting stuff out if you also do the digital downloads. Of course, if you have a hard media like I do, and I do prefer to have the actual media disc itself, rather than using the online service, which you gotta pay, I think it's $10 a month for. You can get a lot of these games digitally, stored on your hard drive. But, you know, I'm really not into that. I'm into keeping the actual video game media myself over time. The reason is you don't know how long these systems will be supported for. So with the PS4 Pro coming out, well, already out at this point in time, and a new system coming out soon, we don't know how long the PS4 Slim will have support for. The developers will soon be making games for the PS4 Pro at this point in time. From what I understand, there aren't many that play in the 4K, but that system is 4K capable. This one is not 4K capable, but the resolution is fantastic if you still have a regular 1080p television, so I don't mind that at all. Alright, so this is the progression of my video game technology. Right here in the middle is the original Sony PlayStation 1. This was what started it all for me. So this system came out back in '95, and since then has really been redesigned many times. This is the second system I got when I was younger. This is the Sony PlayStation 2 Slim. As you could tell, it's extremely slim. You have these two USB ports in the front, an original Sony memory card, and you have the two regular ports for your remotes. I'll take a look around it. You have a regular network port and the digital audio out, power in, and you have the regular TV hookups right here. The PS1 was a great system, but just, you know, to notice the progression. So they call this the Slim, and it is much, much thinner than a regular original PS4. It is only a two-layer type of design. If you guys check out the PS4 Pro, they kind of call it a hamburger because it's a triple-layer design and it's substantially large compared to this. In retrospect, looking back at it, the PS2 was a fantastic system. Very compact, I would say, very good looking. You could see how they went back to this matte black design with the PS4 and the Pro as well. On the right here, we have some of the remotes that I have. This one is the original PlayStation 1 remote. And I shouldn't really say original. It's kind of the redesigned DualShock remote. The original one did lack these two DualShock sticks. and it didn't vibrate. So in terms of that, the remote is not far off. You could see it's basically similar. Of course, the PS4 remote is fully wireless. You can charge it with a USB charger here. You do have a touchpad on top, and the functionality of the touchpad is very minimal. In most games, it doesn't really do anything. In some games, if you press it, you can kind of change the view or whatever you want to program it to. You still have the same Sony type buttons here on the right. You have the same dual shocks. What's great about this system, you could turn it on remotely by pressing this PS button right here. So you can turn the system on from anywhere. You could sit on your couch and put it on and turn it off with that. It's very convenient. And you have a status light bar here. Here you have your headphone jack cables. So now I guess you're wondering why I have this Xbox 360 remote. Well, I also picked up a used Xbox 360 not long ago, paid a very small amount of money for it. I think under 50 bucks. It came with a 60 gig hard drive, 2 remotes like this, and also the network adapter, which you definitely need to make it wireless. So I actually have come to love the Xbox since the older version. Sure, you can get the One S or the One, and we have the Xbox Scorpio coming out soon. But I really gotta say, I do love the 360. The remote is just very comfortable to hold. It has a little bit of a better hand feel than the PS4 remote. I kind of like the fact that it's a little thicker here, and it's a little bit on the heavier side. Kind of nice, actually. One of the best things about this is you have the choice of going either battery or rechargeable. So this one has the rechargeable pack. Lasts for quite a while, but you can get a standard set of AA's with this proprietary box, obviously. So AA's last a very long time. PS4, the gaming time is actually not that long. You constantly have to recharge it. In terms of games, there's a whole ton of games for the PS2. I think out of any console from this era, the PS2 had the most amount of games. The GameCube had barely any. The Dreamcast also didn't do so well, although it was a system ahead of its time. Dreamcast was the first system to have a built-in modem, although it was a 56K modem. You could have in the future got a broadband adapter. But I was never personally interested in gaming with other people. I like actual disc media. I like single games, or maybe at most I'll do, two-player. But I'm not interested in the whole going online, chatting with people, texting. That's just not for me. That's a whole different level of gaming. You have to pay the subscription, and that's really where they make the money on those systems themselves. Believe it or not, a lot of these systems are sold at a loss. From what I remember, the original Sony PlayStation 3 Fat is what it's called, the 20 and the 60 gig version. They cost the manufacturer $900 to make, but they sold them for $600, which at the time was a lot of money, considering I was able to pick up this PS4 for $250 with all the additional accessories and with all the inflation we've had since then. So the price is substantially lower. These systems are becoming fairly collectible, especially the PlayStation 1 at this point. The games are a little bit hard to come by. GameStop no longer sells PS2 games. I've been going there every couple of weeks to see if they have any used PS2 games, and sure enough, they don't. So your only place to really get those is at some kind of, I guess, flea market or eBay or, trade amongst friends. But I really do love the PS2 for its simplicity. It's really an ageless, timeless type of design. As you could tell, we no longer use memory cards in game consoles. Now you have these enormous hard drives, which basically are, the technology in video game consoles is becoming closer and closer to PCs. That's why a lot of the architecture on the original Xbox was actually PC based. A lot of people do some kind of mods on them. I'm not interested in that. I actually prefer the original standard technology. I've never had any issues with the Sony PlayStation systems. As you could tell, they're basically similar in terms of their, remote design and functionality. Of course, the graphics on the PS4 are, fantastic. Literally, for me, what determines whether a game has good graphics or not is when you look at a water scene. I really like to look at the water in the games, and especially in Uncharted 4. You literally cannot tell that the water is, a video game. So if you look down into the distance in any of the scenes, it looks like you're in real life. Here's one of the games I've actually loved over the years. It's Driver 2. This is kind of similar to Grand Theft Auto, except it's a little bit on a different side. It's similar in the fact that you have to do missions. It's car-based. You could do stuff very similar to Grand Theft Auto, but obviously it's made by a different developer. So this is actually a great game. You guys can take a look at some of the actual graphics on the screen. Of course, they're very crude, but you got to realize this, the PS1 right here, this dirty looking, I guess, gray one. Well, I'll clean it up later, don't worry about it. This was actually one of the first consoles, and in addition to the Nintendo 64, that did a great job with 3D graphics. Before this system, you had basically, you know, on a Super Nintendo, the regular Nintendo, and whatever else it competed with in that generation of video game consoles, you had pretty much kind of side-scroll type games where people would fight or run around, similar to Mario. But at that point in time, systems didn't do well with 3D graphics. So as I remember when I was a kid, I used to have the PS1 and my friend had a Nintendo 64. 64 was great. I'm actually in the process of trying to pick one up right now. Hopefully I'll get an okay deal on that on eBay. But, you know, those systems didn't do so well, mainly for the reason that they used a cartridge. Now, of course, if you're a kid, a cartridge is very easy to handle. You basically can't break it. Something like this, when you're a kid and you're trying to load a CD, you have to lift it up. What if it's scratched, it's dirty, whatever the case is. It's meant for more of an adult type experience, and I guess they're more susceptible to damage. So Nintendo decided to use the cartridge system on a Nintendo 64. Of course, we know today that they were severely limited in space and amount of memory that developers could use to put software on the games, whereas a CD was, you know, more than 4 times the amount of space. They were much cheaper to produce, and we see today that the CD type media, whether it's a DVD or a Blu-ray type disc, the media itself has basically stuck around. The most current Sony PlayStation 4 and Xbox One S still do use you know, Blu-ray type players. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure the PS4 Pro does also, but the Xbox One S definitely does. And in terms of the media, it's identical. Now, just something I forgot to point out. Notice that the back of the CD is black. That doesn't mean anything. That's just something that Sony wanted to do to differentiate themselves. And I actually used to love it as a kid. Another great feature that the actual PlayStation line had, as opposed to other consoles of the time, even let's say the GameCube and the Dreamcast, these still used regular video discs. So, you know, whether it was a DVD, a CD, you could actually play music in the PlayStation 1. You had separate video, separate music type, I guess, menus you could put in a regular CD and just listen to music on it. And you got to realize this, at the time, back when this was released, 1995, now this is not the first edition model. This is more, I think I picked it up in maybe 98. So it was a little bit down the line. The actual design and the features are similar. Yes, it did drop a couple of the ports in the back, but this is still basically the same exact system in terms of graphics and performance that it has. So at that time, you know, CD players were a little bit hard to come by. People still regularly listened to the radio. Cars had cassette tapes in them. You know, if you had a car with a navigation system, that was super, super rare. I think the Acura TL was one of the first type of mainstream low-level luxury vehicles back in '98 to have a navigation system. And it was DVD based at that time. So another one of my favorite gifts that I actually got as a gift for my birthday when I was a little kid was this James Bond Tomorrow Never Dies. Very good game. You have a good amount of different types of levels. You have skiing right here. You have, you know, a shooter type thing. You have driving. Very well developed game. I gotta say the graphics were pretty crude, but of course at the time it seemed fantastic compared to other consoles of the time. And from what I remember in those days, PC technology was not far superior to a console. If anything, they also had a hard time developing good 3D games because of the fact that 3D accelerators in the early 90s were still not really profoundly used, and actual processors at that time, whether you had a Pentium 2, 3, 4, were fairly expensive to come by. So the console was one of the cheapest, best ways to get into, I guess, 3D gaming. and also gain some kind of a CD player or a DVD player, whether that's the case. So what can I say about my overall experience from the Sony PlayStation 1 to the 2 to the 4? I gotta say that I really, and you know, I don't know whether maybe it's because I was a younger person at the time, and as we all know, it takes less overall effort and money to, you know, entertain a young kid as opposed to an adult or a teenager. So I really had the most amount of fun with these two systems. The fact of the matter was, you know, you don't have to hook up any kind of online services, no accounts, nothing. You just take the disc, you put it in, and you play. Whenever you're done, you just turn it off. You know, you save your game, you go away, you come back. With the PS4, every time I turn it on, there's some kind of download, some kind of patch, some kind of update. It's pretty complex to do. You know, I also cannot figure out how to check the amount of memory I have left on the hard disk. Now, if anybody knows, please let me know if there's any way to delete or remove, or I guess check the amount of space I have on the PS4. I haven't really had this console for that much time, but that's really something I'm kind of looking to check at this point. So I guess you guys are wondering why, out of the whole PlayStation lineup to date, I'm missing the PS3. Well, I'm actually looking for a PS3 at this point. I'm really looking for one of the earlier generation ones, either the I think it was the 20 or the 40 or the 60 gig version, and specifically those because they are backwards compatible with PS2 games. As I mentioned earlier, there's a whole bunch of PS2 games. They're actually fantastic. PS3 games are good too in terms of graphics. They're not much worse than PlayStation 4, but they are, you know, more expensive obviously than PS2 games at this point. But I really like the fact that they were able to fit in the whole hardware architecture from a PlayStation 2 into a PlayStation 3. Now, of course, as the later generations of the PS3 came out with the larger hard disk versions, Sony realized that, you know, they could save some money and just not make it backwards compatible anymore. So I'm not looking to pick those up. Now, the counterpoint to that argument is, you know, well, whether you should pick up an early generation PS3. I'll tell you one negative thing is they're fairly unreliable. So just like the Red Ring of Death on the Xbox, if you guys know those, you should know by now what I mean. So they're fairly unreliable. You know, today, if you're trying to pick one up, you really got to check to see if it works. I've even had a pretty difficult time looking for one myself, but I'm still going to keep on searching. Hopefully I'll have the whole lineup. Don't know if I'm ever going to get the PS4 Pro. I'm probably going to skip that unit. I'm really not interested in the 4K experience at this point. Maybe when they come out with their new system in the coming year, that's going to be something to consider. But as you guys can see, I generally pick up the systems at the end of their useful life cycle. The reason is the cost is just so low and they're bundled so well with you know, so many things. I really don't want to overpay. I'm not really an early adopter of gaming technology. I'm not a gamer, as I said before, but I do appreciate the evolution of the technology itself and what I guess the amount of fun you can have with minimal I guess hardware here.